we begin, we just have a couple of traditions. And the first one is a tradition that I learned from some elders and some communities that I have worked with in North America. And that is to ask permission of the elder or the elders in the group to begin. So if you yourself identify as an elder, we're just going to ask you to give us a little bit of a wave of your fingers, an elevated sparkulation, to give us an indication that we have your permission. Thank you very much. The other tradition that we have is we like to acknowledge country, and this is something that is something that Fearless Communicators learnt when we came to Australia the first. I mean, I had learnt from being in Australia, but in terms of our company, Fearless Communicators, it was something that was new to Eduardo, our founder, when we came in 2018, and now we take it everywhere in the world. So just wanting to acknowledge the land that we are on. And I also need to acknowledge at this point, I'm in new land. I have arrived in Barbados a couple of days ago, and I actually don't know the name of the indigenous community, but I now am on point in finding out the name of the indigenous community here in Barbados. But I do want to acknowledge elders past, present and future and emerging. And so if you know of the land where you are at the moment, if you just invite you to add that into the chat so that we can acknowledge the custodians of the land with their gracious wisdom and everything that they gift us. And the other thing I want to acknowledge at this point is Fearless Communicators is a US-based company, but we also work globally. And the other thing we acknowledge at this point, above and beyond the custodians of the land everywhere that we go, the elders and the wisdom past, present and emerging. We also acknowledge the global state of racism, misogyny, ageism, ableism and LGBTQ+ phobia. And what we do is we use our bodies, our voices and our stories in our work towards dismantling those systems of oppression to create equity, justice and freedom for all. So yes,
yes.
Please. So with that acknowledgement, welcome to Moving Fearlessly number 11. This is a collaboration between Fearless Communicators, which I'm representing, and Yo, who's here on my screen, who is one of our Fearless Communicators, but also an amazing communicator of her own with her own organisation, Moving Communication, based in Sydney. And so when we began our Fearless Chats based in the US, when COVID hit in March, it created a space for us to be able to bring community together. And listen everything the community had to say. And also create a platform for the amazing thought and being leaders in our community to also share and to answer some of the questions and to create the spaces that we needed now. And then Yo, her amazing wisdom went, excuse me, hello, what about community down under? Let's create a space down there. Let's create down there. Let's create a space in Australasia where we can also gather to have conversations, workshops and be together. And we said, why yes, and let's rock and roll. And you've just turned up to the 11th iteration of those chats. So Yo, at this point, is there anything you wanted to say before we continue on?
No, just to say, yeah, welcome and yeah, amazing. Here we are at number 11, and just to acknowledge and appreciate the chats we've had. It's our intention really is to bring women and men who support, you know, women in claiming their voice and their message and their presence in the world. And each 11 chats have held a really juicy element of substance, of something we can all take away and be aware of in our own experience of where and how we show up. So yeah, just to celebrate, appreciate that. And here we are at another beautiful substance to life with listening with Jen.
Yeah, yeah. So today I am delighted. I cannot tell you. I am legitimately excited and a little bit like moving in my seat excitement, because today I get to share with you the amazing wisdom of Jen Barrkman. So when I moved from Melbourne to Brisbane in the early 2000s, I joined Brisbane Playback Theatre, and one of those members was Jen Barrkman. And I was really early in my work with playback theatre, which is a storytelling type of theatre. And you know, I was young, so I really thought I knew a lot. I didn't really, but I met so many amazing women who taught me so much. And one of those women is Jen Barrkman. And beyond working together in playback theatre, Jen and also another woman, Christine Plowman, we created a consultancy, Red Thread Stories, which is still actually running today. I stepped away 7 years ago when I left Australia, but Jen and Chris are still running that consultancy. So for many years, I have been facilitating, working with, listening to, sharing stories with Jen in so many different ways across Australia. But it's been a while since we've had a chance to be together in space in this way. So I am, that's my giddiness, like it's returned, you know, one of my playmates. And one of the things we used to offer, and it was the first time I had a chance to facilitate this, and this was inspired by Jen, was to offer listening workshops for organisations and individuals. And through my work with Jen and also Chris with Red Thread Stories, I learned so much about listening, and I learned that I'm also still learning. And so welcome, 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 Jen Barrkman, to the Zoom room and the power of being heard.
Thanks so much, Steph. Thanks.
Yeah. Woo, Jen.
Woo. So I like to start because I think one of the really important things around being heard and listening is creating a space where people are heard. So I'd like to start with a check-in so that we can each say a word about how we're arriving here today now to this session on Zoom. So I invite you just to take a breath and to put your hand up, to really be here, to arrive, to show that you're here, that you're fully here. And when you're ready, yeah, you can wiggle your hand, whatever you like. And when you're ready, to just say one word for how you are arriving, how you're feeling right now. And I'll start with excited. And put your hand down when you say
Giddy.
Anticipating.
Grateful.
Elevated.
Curious.
Interested.
Curious.
Unmute yourself, everyone, so you don't have to worry about.
Curious.
Delighted.
Intrigued.
Curious.
Is that everybody?
Yeah.
Some people were muted, but that's okay. Lovely.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to share a story, to begin with a story, and bring yourself here to listen to my story. And I'd invite you to get into a space for you that is about listening, whatever that is for you. So ground yourself, notice your feet on the ground, take a breath, but get into a listening space. Close your eyes if you wish, wiggle if you wish, whatever it is for you. And I'm going to share a story and invite you to listen to the heart of the story as I share it. And I'll take a few breaths too, because, yeah, I'll just take a few breaths. The phone rings. This is a time when phones had dials and your fingers moved in circles. The time when I had much less wrinkles and my hair was very short. It's my mum ringing. Do you have plans for Easter yet? She asks. No, I reply. Can you come over and look after my house while I go away? She had a plan, and I was one of the pieces in her plan. I paused. My then partner is lying on the couch doing a crossword. Mum knows my partner. We've been together a few years. Yet the chasm of silence about our relationship is wide and getting wider. No mention from Mum about us or about her. I prevaricate. I'm not sure I can come over, I reply. Mum starts questioning me, getting louder, asking why can't I come over if I don't have any plans? She becomes more accusing, annoyed and annoying. Her story of being unsupported, alone, and having ungrateful children gets louder and louder and louder. The story she had about me is different to how I am, and certainly doesn't include my female partner. I rarely ask you to do anything for me, she says. You're an ungrateful, and she hangs up on me. On hearing Mum, I take up my familiar shame and guilt. And my story arises of not being good enough. But then this time, for the first time, a grumbling began. The grumbling of not being heard. And I noticed the pounding of my heart, the sensations in my body. The story started banging in my head about not being heard. And her story for so many years of not got in the way of listening to my story. And so I took courage in my hand and I rang back and said, listen to me. So for the first time, I actually said, hey, I need you to listen to me. And she didn't say much at that moment. And she did drop her story a little bit. She just listened for a bit. She didn't say much, but later I did notice a small shift and she started to acknowledge my partner a little. And next time I saw her, she gave me a tentative hug. So that's my story. And my mum's still not one of the world's best listeners. Listening is not one of her strengths. But it has been a gift that she's given me. Her gift has helped me to learn about listening and what helps people to be heard. And so I've learned a lot about listening and hearing, and that to be heard involves creating a space to be heard. It involves listening. And it involves showing somebody that you've heard them. So that's my story. And thank you. Oh, sometimes telling a story is
yeah. And so just take that moment then. And I just want to say, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now I'd like to ask you some questions. And the first question, just put up your hand. Who here has had an experience of not being heard? Put up your hand if you've had an experience of not being heard. Is that just about everybody? There's a few people who haven't, just about everybody. And we all know what that's like. And it might be different for all of us. Put up your hand if you've had an experience of being heard. And we know what that's like. Thank you. So I have a question. When you were listening to my story, what helped you to listen? And I invite you to put in the chat, as you were listening, what helped you to listen?
Okay, Rosalind has identification. It was a personal story and really honest. Tiffany was interested. Bridget closed her eyes and just focused. Beautiful. Helen, the honesty and the feeling in it. Mandy, I wanted to. Catherine, details of the event that placed it. The phone. Yes, I agree, the phone. Connecting with my own experience. The invitation to listen. Interesting, Claire. And Pam, listening for keys. Tiff, it was clearly important to you. Oh, great.
So these, some of these things help us to listen. So what stopped you? Was there anything that stopped you from listening? The pauses?
Pauses to contemplate. So in that, I noticed that like your own story starts playing really quickly, you know? My girlfriend getting
out of bed. Fantastic. Yeah.
That's interesting is brought forward judgment. Distraction of my husband walking in behind me. Joe feeling a bit cold. Fair enough, it's Melbourne.
So some of the things are internal to us and some of the things are around in our environment with some of the things that stop us. It's good just to be aware. So when you were also listening, what were some of the ways that you could have shown me that you were listening?
And do you want people to write this in the chat, or are we going to?
Maybe express it. So you know, if you were to show that you're listening, what were some of the ways that you might have shown? Yes, say them if you wish.
Yeah, we've already got nodding and smiling from a couple of people. There's a few nodding and smiling, and I love this, sending you encouraging love. Thank you, Joe. But I think we do have time for maybe just like one or two of you to take off mute and just to share with Jen
how you might
show that. How do we know that we're showing that we're listening?
Yeah, and that I've been heard. How would I know that you've heard me?
Right.
Be looking straight into your face, but it's very hard on Zoom.
Yeah, it's tricky, hey?
But I am.
Yeah, I can see that, Helen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being able to reflect and repeat some of the aspects you said in a story, but we couldn't do that because there are too many of us.
Because you were listening, but yes, you could repeat back, reflect back some of the aspects.
Okay, Samantha's put here eye contact, which we already had, but she's also added picking up on words you say and asking questions about that.
Yep. So inviting more questions to find out more, picking up on my words.
Something about the breathing for me, because I could feel, you know, your the depth of feeling within the story, and I could feel it in my belly as well. So I was aware at some point that the intensities of the feelings and breathing into that as a way to stay present.
Sorry, Yo, how would you show me that?
Yeah. Well, probably through, you know, what's been expressed, the nodding, the eye contact. And there, I do believe there is something generated internally. I don't know if you call that intention on that energetic presence level, you know, to breathe in. And you know, I don't know exactly what happens there, but I feel it.
Like Joe was saying before, sending encouragement, sending love.
Yes, that intention.
Like found myself also leaning slightly in on certain points. So there's also something about body language.
Mm.
Oh, is harmonic resonance. Nice.
Mm.
Yeah, Tiff, giving you all my attention and not
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Not doing something else, you know, where's that phone? Where's that cup of tea?
yeah.
Yeah. So these are all the ways that, you know, through our body and through words, we usually show that we're listening. And for me, the non-words are the ways I think that I listen the most. So I've learned about myself that I'm not so good with words, that for me, listening is some of this sense. It's in my body as I'm hearing, I feel it. And sometimes when I'm really in a space, I'm in an open space, I also images and metaphors sometimes pop up. But what I normally might show, you know, I might say words, but sometimes words just don't do it for me. And I've learned this over many years through my work in playback, in psychodrama, and all sorts of things, that it's sometimes more than words. Listening, being heard, showing that we're heard is more than words. And it's sometimes the thing, though, that we get hooked by and that we try with words to show that we're listening, or we try to make it better for someone or solve something. So what I'm going to invite now is a couple of other ways, and I've asked Deb and Yo to demonstrate from my story some other ways that they may have listened to my story and heard my story and shown me that they'd heard. And I've invited them, I've kind of done a bit of preparation to do metaphor, perhaps drawing, I don't know if they may have done that, or colour. So I'm just going to pass it over to them to demonstrate a couple of ways. And a bit later, we're going to get a chance to do it, but some ways that you could demonstrate that you've heard. Over to you, Deb and Yo.
Yeah, I didn't do it. I'm not a drawer really, so I didn't do any drawing. If your story though, Jen, was a dream, yeah, the dream would have, you know, I see rope and I see water and I see a boat overturning and someone getting on top of the boat and getting back in the boat, and this really, you know, that beautiful navy rope, you know, really thick rope is still kind of hanging from the boat, dangling down into the depths of the water with reeds and trying to grab hold of it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Yo.
If this story were a colour, it started out with red and then presented some blue. And then by the end of the story, the two colours had mixed together and had created like this purple heart with bits of red and blue still there.
Thanks, Deb. And maybe somebody else has a just an image that came to them, or a metaphor, or a picture. If you're kind of a squiggler or a doodler, there may have been a picture that came up, and if this story was a picture. So if it did come up for anyone when I was telling, please share it now. If not, that's absolutely fine. Just thank you, it's fine. Ellen? So a movement, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
I feel like the palette changed from the beginning, Jen, of being kind of washed out and heavy almost. And then when you empowered yourself to make that call in the dream, you know, then it was brighter, like the color burst. So that's what I felt when we were talking.
Any more? So listening, I find it involves words, and it involves much more than words. And showing that we've listened, that we've been heard, is the next layer. So there's listening, and then showing that we've heard. And sometimes we can do that beyond words. So we're going to have an opportunity for you to have a practice of listening in a different way, listening beyond just words, using metaphor, using colour. If you're a drawer, using drawing as you hear stories. So if you are a drawer, grab some colouring in pencils. Or it may also be in doing this that all there is a thank you, and to allow space for the thank you and for the silence. Because I do think that that's something else that's really important, something that I've learned, is that we need to create space to allow, and space for silence too when we're listening.
Can I say, should we add those in the chat then, just so that everyone has the frames?
I'm doing that right. I am doing that. I was just wondering, Jen, so there's colour, images.
So if this story was a colour, what colour would it be? If this story was a dream, what would it be? If this story was a picture, what did it look like? And perhaps there's a sound and movement, like if this story had a sound, you could just make the sound or a movement. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And there's something of just framing it and listening to the heart. So fewer words, the fewer words, the better. So I really encourage you to listen without too many words, to listen to the essence of the stories, and to use as few words as you can in your metaphor.
Yeah, beautiful. Can I ask a question, Jen, that I'm curious about? When people are preparing to listen, are you saying, like, I'm going to listen to the colour? Or are you asking people to just listen and then see what emerges?
Yeah. I think the latter more, Deb. Okay. So I'm really, because we're all different in this and how we listen. So what I'm really going to encourage is to listen openly and just notice what emerges. So for some people, a colour may emerge. For some people, an image or a metaphor might just pop into your head. For some, it might be a movement. For some, it might just be that gentleness of just healing. So I don't want you to try, because I think trying gets in the way.
Yes.
If we try to listen in a certain way and it's not, then we get more hooked into our head. And I can't do that, I'm not good enough. And it takes us away. So really wanting people to go with what comes up for them. And there's no right or wrong. There is absolutely no right or wrong. So it's just about what emerges for you. So to take the breath, to take the time and notice. And so after I've asked someone to share a story, when you're giving back, just give back what's in you. And if there's not anything, no metaphor, whatever, just a thank you is more than enough.
Beautiful.
Is that, yeah? So
Tiff's sharing an image at the moment.
Yeah,
just pictured a graph.
Ah, wonderful.
Again,
Where is it?
Spotlight.
Oh, wow.
Spotlight and see. Oh, look, there we go.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Which is like, for me, she was kind of the stable, she was there. And that was stabilizing kind of influence, and the emotion level here. So there's mum called. And this is when she said, what are you doing? I want you to, you know, do something for Easter for me. This is her story of you. That's when she hung up. And then this is yours.
And I'm curious about what 293 is, but we that's fantastic.
In my journal.
No.
293 times mother didn't listen to you, Jen.
So yeah, that's, and you can like, it just enlivens something.
But notice the difference in you, just before you go on, the difference in you, Jen.
Yeah,
you know, like being heard and seen in that way. Like you were like, oh, like the delight of it.
I really,
like, oh, I've been heard in that way. Like, I don't know if anyone else noticed it, but I noticed it.
So I'm going to invite someone who might have a story about a time when you were heard or a time when you weren't. And it's just a short story, just 2 or 3 minutes, and one that you feel okay with sharing here, because we are being recorded and we are in a space that's online. So I just want to remind people of that. But if somebody has a short story that they're open to sharing here, could you just put up your hand?
A short story about
A time
not
when
being
you've been heard or a time when you haven't been heard.
Oh, thanks for saying that again.
Joe. Thank you. So Joe.
Oh, sorry.
I invite you to share your story. I won't ask any questions and let you share your story. So just, and I invite everybody else to take a breath and listen and open yourself to listen and see what emerges. And then I'll invite you to share back to Jo after she shared her story in whatever way you wish, with there once was a dream, colour, picture, sound and movement, or just a very simple thank you. So Jo, your story.
I'm sitting at a dining room table and I'm about 5 years old, wearing a dress that is making me look kind of cute and pretty, but I feel really uncomfortable in it. And all around me are my family talking. And I have 2 older brothers who are pretty articulate, and I feel very much the little sister. And I go to say something and I can't remember what it is. And my grandmother turns to me and says the oft quoted phrase of that time of my life: children should be seen and not heard. And I feel my voice squashed. I feel tears welling up in my eyes because I had something very exciting to say. At least I thought it was really exciting. So I can't remember what it was, but that doesn't matter. What I can remember is that feeling of being kind of stabbed by my grandmother and just my voice being squashed. Mm-hmm. But interestingly, the week after, we go to stay with my mother's best friend and husband, a family who never had children and became like our second parents. And in that environment, Edward, the husband, always asked me how I was doing. Anything I said, he would ask, "Oh, tell me more, Jo." And through the experience of this amazing man, Edward, I kind of realized that I did have a voice and that I should say what I want. But back home, I didn't.
Thank you, Jo. So I now invite those that wish to give back to Jo her story using whichever the ways you wish to share. Bridget?
Thanks, Jo. So there was a few images. The first image was with you in your dress. It felt like you were Alice in Wonderland. Suddenly you were in really big and in this dress, quite uncomfortable, and everybody was around you. You were not comfortable.
So
Then,
Bridget,
yes.
can I just jump in a bit? Would I encourage you just to say, just to capture, if this story was a dream, it's a story about Alice in Wonderland in a beautiful dress. Just try and capture just with few words. It's fantastic what you saw. I'm just going to encourage you to just capture the essence.
So
the story was a dream.
The story's a dream. Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
She's really big. Then she becomes really small. And the story shifts to a hand-drawn graphic of everything is blacked out and all is left is her tiny little face.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tips added here, Jen. The door slams shut, the door opens to sunlight.
So I'll pick up. Actually, interestingly, Bridget, I had the same image of Alice. So for me, it was, if this story was a dream, Alice is sitting in her chair, grandmother like spears into her heart, and she, like, it's like all the air goes out and she shrivels right down into a smaller essence of herself. And then the image shifts over to where the other, I forget what his name is, Edward, I think, speaking to her and it's like breathing the air back in, and she comes back up to a very big Alice.
Rosalind in the chat, if this story was a dream, it's black and white and all the people in the dream are sitting together on the one chair.
Can I leap in with one?
Yeah.
If this was a sound.
That's a big Claire.
Who can follow that up? If this was a metaphor for me, it's like a plant that needs attention and sunlight.
And for me, I'm a firework. I'm lots of colours. I can go so high. Oh, it rained. I went out.
Mandy?
La 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 la. Edward! Edward! It's me, Edward. It's me. I found my voice.
If this was an image, I'm just going to show an image. I'm a wilted mushroom under that dark cloud, and it's raining tears. And then in the other Edward, I open up my mushroom and I find my music. and I'm singing and I have a voice.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh,
If this, I know, it's so gorgeous.
so great.
To me, if this, oh, sorry, is someone, yep, okay.
Go, you. Go.
Oh, is, thanks. If this story was about the importance of families, relationships outside families, that this I'm finding this hard to say it in that way, but to me this story is about the importance of a relationship outside the nuclear family.
Is
had one.
Yeah, the image I had, and I didn't have a pencil to draw it, so I'm just going to describe it. The image is also from Alice in Wonderland. The queen seated on Alice and crushing her, and Alice hardly being able to breathe, and the rabbit taking her hand and pulling her from underneath the queen.
It's amazing how the listening had this Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Like theme that went through it.
Shell?
The image that I have is from a Mother Peace tarot card, and it's of the Son of Swords. And at the start of the story, Joe, I see you as a bird that's been shot through with an arrow. And at the end of the story, you are the sun that has risen and being protected by the divine masculine.
And Tiff here, the impact of a small kindness can overcome immediate harshness. Beautiful.
And there's another one from Samantha. Voice is locked in a small box and put up on the dusty shelf.
This story was a dream. It's a story of a voice locked in a small box and put up on an dusty shelf. Wow. So, thank you, everyone. And I'd like, is there any more?
Nope. I was fascinated to hear from Joe how that.
I was going to ask, Joe, what resonated for you? So, in hearing the stories, what resonated for you? Where did you feel heard? You probably felt it. Yeah.
I felt heard by absolutely everybody, and I loved it. I think I especially identified with the voice being locked into a small box, like being squished down. I loved the mushroom idea, but I loved absolutely I loved them all. I felt super heard, and I just wanted to show you a picture of Edward.
Hold on, spotlight. Oh.
So that is my second, and he lived till he was 97.
Yeah.
So I had him for a large part of my life, and he knew he was my second dad. But anyway, I just felt I had to honor the picture of him as well.
Thanks, Joe. So I invite, so now from everybody else, what did you notice about the listening and how you listened and how you demonstrated you heard, not using words so much? I mean, we did use words, and I'm aware that I kind of butted in, Bridget, when you were starting, but really trying, it's kind of a thing of not using our words as much. So that's why I did it at the beginning. But what did you notice in sharing that back in a slightly perhaps different way?
You wanting people to put that in the chat, Jen, or share it?
Share it. Just share it briefly, or in the chat. But what did you notice? What was easy? What was difficult about it for you as showing that you had heard using different ways? Laurie saying, think more deeply about the story.
Tiff says that it's hard for me not to use words. Yeah. You know what I noticed, Jen, is that because you gave us different ways that we could listen, like I was actually listening through the color and if it was a dream, and I was seeing pictures. And so I kind of had like a different opening to the way I was listening because I was invited to listen in a different way. I don't think that always happens, but there was something really nice about the invitation. Visualizing language is difficult, but works better for showing feelings sometimes, hardly handy for writing metaphor. Yes, Rosalind. And Samantha, I found that I picked up more on the negative than the positive. Maybe because once I heard the negative, I dwelled on it rather than accepting it and moving along with the rest of the story. That's interesting, Samantha. Mm.
It made me, the invitation to to notice how I listen, made me aware that I listen, I see, the scene being played out. So it was lovely to hear all that imagery around Alice in Wonderland, because I could see you, I could see your grandmother, I could see Edward. Yeah. But then when it came to talking, what I wanted to share was that, interesting reference. So, yeah.
Is I kind of notice it, I feel it in my body, and I do sometimes find it hard to find the words. So, I did notice that in myself.
Shell's put here, I become still when I'm listening with just face showing that I'm listening. I love the invitation to share using different modalities from Mandy. And Laurie, me too, Johanna, but I also pictured Joe in my own childhood dining room. Yeah. You start to create the pictures. And Jen, you're talking about the feeling it in the body. I think one of the other things that I think I sometimes do when I'm listening, if I want to show someone that I've heard them, is I say to them, oh, I felt that in my belly. Or I can feel the pressure on my shoulders. Like sometimes I actually just reflect back, because I sometimes, not always, but sometimes will get a really full-on body sense. And sometimes maybe that's enough. I feel the story in my body, and it was hard to let go of the crushing grandmother, Shell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tiff, me too, Shell. That's come up a couple of times in the listening of like a moment in stories that we can get caught on. And then what does that do for our listening? Like
not take us somewhere else.
Or somewhere else, yeah.
So I think listening is a journey, and it's an art, and it's something that we need to be aware of and focus on, and to show that we've been heard, and be aware of showing that we've heard sometimes in different ways can be really useful. Words are certainly important, and sometimes there are other ways that we need to be heard and to hear, and to open ourselves up to some of those different ways. Yeah, and so by way of finishing, just on reflection, what have you discovered about yourself, about being heard, or about listening? And just by way, just to say a word or two words, if that's in you, by way of finishing, and then we'll have a check. Deb and Yo do this wonderful check out.
Is this an invitation for everybody to share, or just there's something
everybody to share if they wish?
Because there's some great stuff coming through the chat.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, listening is really an act of love, by Laurie. New ways to listen from Joe. So even if you feel like you want to share this into the space, even you can leave it in the chat if you don't want to speak it, but I think we have time to actually listen to each other also.
Mandy, yeah.
Just the power and the gift of being acknowledged and being heard. And wonderfully, it's wonderful to be able to do that in different ways, whether it be drawing or through, metaphor. Yeah, it's just it's very life-giving and affirming. And we could see in your face, Jen, you and both Joe, when you were acknowledged that, that's life-giving. And we're sharing our humanity, so it's beautiful. Thank you.
I sort of discovered that it took me time to absorb the story and process it within my own self in order to respond in a way that wasn't just reflecting back your own story, but indicated that it had touched me or moved me in some way. So I found myself needing, a pause, a moment of silence in order for it to be processed and to be able to be responsive. Otherwise I would have been like, to Joe's story, God, your grandmother's horrible, and get fixated. But, it was important to finish the story and for it to perhaps not end on the dusty shelf, but of, it being taken down and released and shined off and released into the sun.
That space, that resonates, yeah.
We've got Richness of Sharing Through Image by Bridget. Space to Speak, Listener's Silence by Pam. Joe, New Ways to Listen. And let me just move that so I can see who said this. Laurie said, listening really is an act of love. Yes.
I think it also reminded me of where I shut people down. As a parent, especially.
It made me aware of that. I keep discovering this and exploring that, pardon me, the tension between listening to myself and listening to you. Like I'm hearing you, but it is triggering my own story. And they all they blend and weave. And, there's a tension of coming in and out of that, being with myself and being with you. So that's what it made me aware of. That, what is that? That's a dance, a rhythm.
The dance
there's a lot
listening.
going on.
Mandy, yeah?
Just in relation to that, when I did some training years ago in creative art therapy, we talked about intersubjective response, which is a response which is reflecting back, and intra, which is really your response to it, what it's brought up for you. So sometimes we're really clear about that, and sometimes we're not. So sometimes it's just a reflection back, and sometimes it's how it's affected us. And they're both, they're both valid.
So thank you.
The Zoom, there's just a couple of chats here worth hearing. The Zoom is listening, intensified, yes, and changes a lot about listening.
And the importance of the attention given. I agree with that one, is. Like you've done a beautiful job of setting the space for the listening, Jen.
Yeah, and that's
not always the case in our normal world.
No.
But I think it's an invitation for us all to think about ways that we can set up spaces for listening.
And it's a time at the moment where listening, I think, is needed so much. There's so many difficult stories to be heard, and we need to create spaces where we can listen to all of them. So, yeah, in many different ways.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen, for creating the space for us all to listen and to be heard and to share and have this experience of the act of love of this listening in this session. And that's going to maybe take us into the next conversation or the next story that we don't really want to listen to.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Delight, complete delight to be with you as you share your beautiful wisdom and gifts. And you know what? Yo and I are listening. We're listening to what you want in this series. We have a few different speakers lined up that we're talking to about coming in and sharing different aspects with you, but we're also really listening to what is emerging at the moment in Australasia and what's needed. Like what type of conversations do you want to be a part of? What thought leadership are you interested in being in the presence of? You can reach out to Yo or myself. It may be you want to put yourself forward, or there may be another woman who you say, I think this person would be great to hold some space. But in this moment, I just want to say thank you to all of you for being with us, just acknowledging that we're at time. So if you need to go, we love you. Thank you so much for being with us. Jen, thank you, thank you, thank you. And for those who can stay, we do have a little ritual with how we like to finish our Moving Fearlessly chats. So if you can stay, stay. If you need to leave, mwah. We'll see you next week. You'll get an email from me with the details for next week. Okay, so okay, let's go with this. So for those who have been with us before, you'll know this ritual. For those who maybe haven't, I'm going to share it again. The way that we like to end, Jen, there's so much love and thanks there for you. Make sure you check out the chat. Everyone, again, is just going to put your hand up the same way we did at the beginning. Check in. And this is going to be our check out. And the way we're going to check out is, like, normally the way that we do it is we say, I see you and thank you. But I think today we could say, I see you, I hear you, and thank you. So I'm going to first pass to, I just want to pass to you, Jen. I'm just so delighted to be with you. Jen, I see you, I hear you, and thank you.
Thank you. Pam, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
Joe, I see you, I hear you, I thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Tiff, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Laurie, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Shell, I see you and I hear you and I thank you.
Thanks, Laurie. Helen, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
Thank you, Shell. Is, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
Deborah, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
Thank you, Is. Claire, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
Vivian, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
Deborah, I see you, I hear you, I thank you.
Did that come back to me?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Vivian. That's okay, Vivian. I'm going to see you, thank you, and love you, and invite you to share it with somebody who has their hand up.
Okay, got it. Johanna, I see you, I hear you, I thank you.
Yeah, lovely, Vivian. Lovely to see you.
Yes.
And Sally, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, I see you, I hear you, and I thank you.
And now, Catherine, you get to see, hear, and thank all of us.
Thank you, Sally. And I see you all. And thank you all.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us with Chat 11. Next week, we're back with Chat 12. Have an awesome week. Take care of each other. Stay safe. Listen. Make invitations to be heard. And move fearlessly through
move fearlessly, and do reach out if you'd like to share anything. We'd really love to host you and host your thought and being leadership with us and with other women and men who support women. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and really look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for being here.
Big love.
Bye, everyone.